Greetings and welcome to Awaz The Voice. I am Rimsha, and today in our series of profiling legal luminaries, we are privileged to speak with Dr. Faizan Mustafa, who has joined us online from Hyderabad. Thank you, sir, for being with us today. Your contributions to legal education and constitutional discourse are truly inspiring. So, I want to begin by asking you about your source of inspiration to pursue a career in constitutional law and legal education.
It's an interesting story about my interest in constitutional law. First of all, I was taught by a great constitutional law teacher. So, Professor Virendra Singh Rekhi was the then dean and my constitutional law teacher in Aligarh. Of many scholars whose lectures I have heard in my long career as a student and as a teacher, I think Professor Rekhi will stand out as one of the best teachers of any law subject and certainly the best teacher of constitutional law. But since my own boss was in criminal law and I specialize in criminal law, so I did not do constitutional law specialization. And then after becoming a lecturer in Aligarh for first 2-3 years, I was not teaching constitutional law. 3 constitutional law professors of the university retired one after another. One constitutional law teacher passed away, and one constitutional law teacher left for abroad. And there was nobody to teach constitutional law. And then my head of the department came to me after having gone to other teachers who expressed inability to teach constitutional law, and he said, well, I am in a problem. You are the baby of the faculty, and therefore you don't have a choice. You have to teach constitutional law. And that's how I started teaching constitutional law without doing LLM specialization in constitutional law, without doing a PhD in constitutional law. But that is a long and short of my interest in constitutional law. But since constitutional law is one law which Indians have developed on their own, of course they borrowed from different countries, and such kind of civilizational borrowing is in fact good. So our constitution is said to be bag of borrows. We borrowed few things from England and few things from USA and few things from Ireland and other countries. But there are innovations which we have made in our constitution. Unlike our criminal law, or unlike our contract law, or our transfer of property law, or our company law, our constitutional law is an indigenous product. And therefore, I felt really fascinated by the kind of progressive, liberal, and democratic constitution which framers of Indian constitution gave to us. I feel that we did not deserve such a great constitution. We do not deserve it even today, probably because we are not yet fully prepared for understanding it and inculcating it in our life. For instance, we are not yet clear about the liberal ideas of freedom of speech and expression, or the dignity of a human being. So the constitution was ahead of us in 1950. It continues to be ahead of us in 2024. But for the first time, I have seen that in a general election, the constitution was a central issue. Both opposition as well as ruling party were talking about threats to this constitution, and the opposition was saying that the government wants 400 chars of power because they want to amend the constitution. and the government was saying that we are not going to amend the constitution. So it's good for the first time the constitution became a central issue in the all important electoral battle.
Absolutely. Well said. So, I'll move on to a next question. How fulfilling has your experience been in bringing about innovative and educational practices as a vice chancellor to NALSAR and CNLU?
You see, many vice chancellors keep asking me that in spite of being vice chancellor for so long, I am by God's grace now in the fourth term as a vice chancellor. Why you continue to be popular amongst the students? And my pet reply is that you are the vice chancellor and I am not the vice chancellor. I am just a teacher. Therefore, while you govern the university from the administrative block and the vice chancellor's office, I believe in governing the university from the classroom. So I take a lot of courses. I go to classes in different batches, and I'm able to solve their problems. Either they would raise it before we start the class, or at the end of a class, or while they walk with me to my office after the class. I have said it repeatedly that students are the main stakeholders of a university. The vice chancellor and the teachers and the non teaching staff and the huge buildings of the university, in some cases, state of art, five-star like infrastructure in universities, particularly in private universities or in some of the national law universities, they exist only for the students. And therefore, students must be given a major say in the university's administration. And that is why I experimented with the liberty model of university administration. Of course, it is something very novel and very new, and many vice chancellors don't believe in it. We believe in the command and control model of administration rather than in the liberty and responsibility model of the administration. But once you give liberty to the students, make them responsible, at times I shout at them, but ultimately they take ownership of the decision making because they are part of the decisions. And therefore, if I have to name one best practice of my administration, it is that I involve students in a big way in the university's administration. And that I think has been helping me. This democratic style of functioning of universities is a game changer, isn't so? They are not, ordinary people, illiterate people. University administration is not like the district administration. I always say, well, I am not, a daroga, and that is why I am not a great believer in controlling youngsters. We should give them freedom, and at the same time, we should make them responsible to use that freedom.
So, in view of the same, as you did mention about private institutions, I would like to ask, does proliferation of private law colleges across the country, including in remote areas, produce students with quality education or foster mediocrity? And what steps can be taken to ensure quality education in these institutions?
You see, we Indians are living in bygone era. In the good old days, the prestigious universities in India were in the public sector. So all our central universities are fully funded by the government. Most of the state universities are also funded by the state governments. The entry of a private sector in higher education is just about 25 years old or so. It is post economic liberalization. Now we continue to look down at the private institutions. I am not denying the fact that unlike United States, where the private sector out of purely philanthropic motivations has been creating big endowments for the universities and then not interfering in the day-to-day functioning of the university. In India, the private sector has set up its own institutions. In many cases, uh, they have used all kinds of wealth available to them in creating state of art infrastructure. But most of the sponsors of private higher education institutions, they tightly control the governance, and therefore the vice chancellor is not at all powerful in a private university. It is the owner of that university or some family member who runs the show. Now, as a result, was what has happened that many private institutions are not able to deliver the promises and the expectations. But I would also like to add that the best universities in United States are private universities. Harvard and Yale are private universities. Our school education is largely in the private hands. You don't see people going to government schools. In fact, governments have not been establishing fully funded government high schools and intermediate colleges. 68% of higher education students in India are also today in the private sector. There are leading private institutions in every discipline. Look at BITS Pilani in engineering. Look at ISB in management. Look at Jindal Law School in the OP Jindal University in Sonipat. There are a number of private institutions which are doing better than the government universities. I myself had set up a law school in Bhubaneswar in the KIIT University. Of course, unlike the owners and the founders of private institutions, the founder of KIIT, Dr. Achyuta Samant, is not only a great philanthropist and a person who has done tremendous work for the tribals of Odisha, but he does not interfere at all in the administration of the university. I can say it for myself that as director of the law school, he never interfered in my work. In fact, I have yet to meet somebody like Dr. Samanta, absolutely down to earth. Absolutely down to earth. And a man who can identify talent, in matter of seconds. As a result, he has a huge university which is highly ranked today, and he has set up another university for the tribal students. And he is giving free education to over 40,000 tribal students in Bhubaneswar. So there are good private law schools. Symbiosis has a fairly good law school. MIT Noida has a fairly good law school. Bennett University has a reasonably good law school. So it is a myth that only the government institutions provide quality educations. Some government institutions do provide quality education, many do not. Similarly, some private institutions are better than the government institution, but many are not.
Absolutely. Totally agreed with you, sir. Moving on to your next question. Um, Reflecting on your career as a legal activist, which pivotal issue in constitutional law or legal education has been the most satisfying for you to work on, and why?
I'm not an activist.
Right.
There is a difference between an academician and activist. I have not participated in my entire life, either as a student or as a teacher, in any protest. This does not mean that protests are not good. As a constitutional law teacher, I would say that protests are good because they are the expression of freedom of speech and expression, exercise of freedom of speech and expression. But I confine myself purely to the academia. And therefore, my job largely has been the involvement in teaching learning process. So I have a satisfaction of setting up, as I said, KIIT Law School, and then I was the founder, Vice-Chancellor of National Law University, Odisha in Cuttack. And then for 10 years, I was serving in Hyderabad at the NALSAR University of Law, where we made some bold experiments in legal education. But on my own personal front, I feel that from day one, I have been saying that our judges are trained in common law. They are not experts of theology, and therefore, on purely theological questions, judges should ideally refrain from becoming clergy. Now, many people, when I started writing this decades ago, that Indian Supreme Court should not become clergy, opposed me. Many of them interpreted my writings as regressive, saying that I am opposing reforms in religious laws or in personal laws. But that was not my argument. My argument was what is essential of Hindu religion, what practices are essential for Hindu religion or for Islamic religion or Islam or Christianity. Judges are not the right people to tell. I have to go to a scholar of Shastras if I want to know about Hinduism. I need to go to muftis and maulvis if I want to understand Islam, and I have to go to the bishops and archbishops and scholars of Christianity if I want to understand Christianity. At the same time, I have been writing that Indian Constitution gives enough powers to the state to bring reforms. Those reforms should be brought under those provisions which permit the state to bring in a reform. So, for instance, the Supreme Court has said on the question of can a Dalit, become a priest? When a Dalit was denied that right, in one line it should have been said that the untouchability has been abolished by Article 17. But what the Supreme Court said, that untouchability is not an essential aspect of Hindu religion. And then this essentiality doctrine has been consistently followed with small variations here and there. For instance, initially they said, what is essential we will decide as per the scriptures. Then they started applying their own rationality to judge 10,000 years old religion or 1500 years old religion. I have been consistently saying this, that this is not the job judges should do. And finally, I am glad that in the Sabrimala judgment, Justice Chandrachud in his judgment, quoted my article, and he said that there are scholars who do not agree with the Supreme Court. And immediately after the Sabrimala judgment, Supreme Court itself accepted a review, and 7 questions were framed, including a question: can the Supreme Court decide what are the essential religious practices? Of course, in between, the COVID intervened, and the Chief Justice Bobde led bench could not finally decide this matter. And I don't see that Justice Chandrachud is going to take it up in remaining 4 months of his tenure. But it is deeply satisfying that what you have been saying for so long was finally accepted by the Supreme Court. Similarly, on right to die, the Supreme Court quoted my article. Of course, it did not agree with me. And the court said that the right to life includes right to die. And then I again wrote number of articles that for a country like India, it is not good to say that right to life will include right to die, because I just said it in the lighter vein that where in a country where you have so many bride burning cases, many mother-in-laws will say, well, I am a rights conscious citizen. My daughter-in-law wanted to die. It was her right under the constitution. And I facilitated, with the petrol and the matchbox. And I'm so glad to see that in a matter of less than 2 years, Supreme Court changed its judgment and said that right to life does not include right to die in the Gyan Kaur case. So it gives you some kind of satisfaction that the highest court of the land is receptive to what you are writing. And definitely the Parliament of India has also invited me while making laws. For instance, the 3 criminal laws which are going to come into force from 1st of July. The Parliamentary Standing Committee invited me. They heard me with rapt attention for 1 hour. Few of my suggestions were accepted, many were not accepted, but that's okay. The mere fact that the country's highest legislative body feels like listening to you. In fact, I was the only law professor who was invited by them. Is deeply satisfying for me.
So, how should we prepare the next generation in constitutional law, considering your lineage of distinguished legal luminaries like Subhash Kashyap? And do you believe that this area deserves greater attention?
Subhash Kashyap was a Secretary General of Parliament. In the highest traditions of constitutional law, researches, the person whose name comes to one's mind is H.M. Sirwai, not Subhash Kashyap. The most authoritative book on Indian constitutional law has come from a leading jurist and lawyer of Bombay, H.M. Sirwai. I would say that anyone who is interested in, first of all, teaching constitutional law or understanding constitutional law, if you start reading cases, you will get a better grip of that subject. I see many teachers no more read original cases and they rely just on some head notes, some newspaper clippings. That is not the way to do law. For the youngsters, I would say that first of all, they should read the Bare Act, and then it depends for what you are doing constitution. If you are doing constitution for civil services, then even the NCRT book of 12th of Indian Constitution or some popular textbook will do. But if you are preparing for judicial services or civil services with law as an optional, then probably you need to do MP Jain and Shukla. If you are going to teach constitutional law, then of course you must read HMCY, you must read, Khaitan, and you must read Oxford Handbook of Constitutional Law. Sudhir Krishna Swami, you should read for basic structure. And so many young authors are coming up who are doing excellent work on constitutional law, and those books are to be read. I believe knowledge is at the intersection of disciplines. A constitutional law teacher would be a good teacher if he is good in humanities. So you need to read sociology, you need to read history, you have to have some grip on economics. Then you become a good teacher. So you have to read a lot of fiction, for instance. So there has to be some kind of humor in your class if you want to be a good teacher. So it really depends at what level you want to do the constitution and constitutional law. That would determine what you should read.
Absolutely. And do you think that this area deserves a greater attention?
Of course, it is the land, supreme law of the land. Uh, you must know the constitution because constitution is that sacred pact between the people and the government.
Absolutely.
It is in the constitution that you know how government should function. Is it functioning according to that sacred pact? So a constitution is a covenant between people and the state. It is a kind of a social contract. So those who value constitution, those who are aware of constitution, and those who have inculcated and internalized the ideals of the constitution would make better, informed, and more aware and enlightened citizens. If the country needs enlightened citizenry, if the country wants to eradicate religious bigotry, and if the country wants to be fully committed to ideals of liberalism and democracy and social justice, then I think it is essential that we popularize the ideals of constitution. I think one of the biggest failure of the Congress government has been having given the country an enlightened, liberal, democratic constitution. They did not really work enough to make people internalize this constitution. So the divisive talks, the hate speech, the opposition to rights and liberties, it comes because we have not made systematic efforts to create a constitutional society. We have not done enough to create constitutional patriotism.
How do you envision leveraging technology to modernize the legal system?
No, you cannot work today without technology.
Absolutely.
When I was doing my research, so we used to go to Indian Law Institute and manually we had to search all the journals. Today you have good databases. Whatever judgment is delivered by the Supreme Court or the High Court, in a matter of hours, you can access it on their websites. So research has become easy, and there are tools available now to use technology to do those researches. I think they are absolutely essential for any discipline, more so for law.
All right. And as we progress to a livelier end, we would love to know beyond your work. So, in regards to that, do you listen to music? And if yes, can you please enlist your favorites?
No, I listen to a lot of music, of course, not of present day Bollywood, but of you know good olden days. I listen to a lot of Sufi music. In fact, you would be surprised that forgetting them, but I do listen to music. In fact, in my hostel, I had you know to begin with, an old big radio, which was initially given by my father to my elder brother, and then I used it, and then my elder brother gave me his transistor. So this Tamil Irshad of All India Radio Urdu service from 10:30 in the night, I used to listen. I really love music. I really love Qawwalis, so I hear a lot of Sufi music as well.
Beyond that, I'm sure that you've gone through shed loads of books in your discipline, but are there any books outside of your field that interest you?
I read lot of autobiographies and biographies. Uh, no more I read fiction, but there was a time when I used to read fiction as well.
All right. Are there any of your favorite books that you can name?
Oh, there are so many. It is difficult for me to tell.
All right. Also, are you someone who we can see in theater enjoying movies? And if yes,
I use movies also for in my classes. In fact, I use lot of movies and YouTube clips.
okay.
I really love watching movies. In fact, when I was a student in Aligarh, there was no other alternative entertainment available to students in those days. So we used to go to city and we used to watch movies. And I think that any good teacher must make lot of use of movies and documentaries in the classes.
Can you name any of the movies that you've recently used in your
This
classes?
Lapata Ladies I watched some
Okay.
time back, and in fact I used that in one of my class. So PK, for instance, comes in for ready reference in religion and law classes.
Right. Okay. And how much of a foodie are you? And what must be some of the favorite dishes?
There was a time when I was a young teacher when the teachers we used to admire, they were all great cooks. So we used to say that to be a good law teacher is one of the essentials to be a good law teacher is that you must be a cook as well. So cooking is one of my hobbies, and I love cooking Mughlai food,
Okay.
and I have put on a lot of weight also because after cooking you really relish your own recipes and whatever you cook. I am really a foodie person, so I love cooking. In fact, if I'm under a lot of stress, then I'll go to kitchen. I'll cook something.
Okay. Any dishes that you love personally a lot?
In terms of cooking,
Yeah.
no, I can stew for instance. So this do pyaza I cook, or the biryani I can cook. But I innovate, so I don't follow the traditional methods. I say that they are not written in stone and they have not been revealed by God. So you can put anything you want in a dish, and so far they have come out. But I never taste anything which I cook. It will be only served on table. I never taste it. So in terms of salt or anything, I will never touch it and not allow anybody else to touch it either.
It was an honor talking to you, and thank you for joining us today.